and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 110, and the title of this episode is The Economic Storm is Surrounding the Government, and There Is No Escape. And, of course, the stock market has finished in a positive way, all eyes on the stock market, and the data around the world is not that great, which is pretty much what we've always been seeing, because there is a huge disconnect between the stock market and the real economy. And also, over the weekend, we had the Zimmerman trial. He was found not guilty, and it seems like all day today, yesterday, the government, the mainstream media, has been pushing the race card, and the Department of Justice, they want to probe into it, and the FBI came out saying that there had nothing to do with race, but Holder doesn't want to give up, and it just seems like they're just continually pushing this thing. Okay. I don't know. For those people who haven't heard it yet, I did an interview with Greg Manarino. I have it posted on the X22 report. It is also posted in YouTube. So if you haven't listened to that, you can go ahead and listen. And let's get started with the economic collapse news. Now, I know we talk a lot about countries not using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. Many countries are starting to bypass the U.S. dollar, and India will be making payments for Iran's crude in rupees. India to settle its $1.53 billion dues with Iran in rupees from now on. All the trade will only be done in Indian currency. And you have to remember, the U.S. government central bank, they are trying to get into Syria and into Iran. If they could, they get into North Korea, to change the way they are doing business. They want these countries trading with the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. And as we can see today, Iran is trading oil with North Korea, not using the U.S. dollar. Iraq, at the time before the U.S. government invaded, was not using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. And the same thing went with Libya and all the other countries. And that's why the U.S. government, the central bankers, really want to get into Syria, and which is a direct path, of course, to Iran. And there's only one problem, and that would be Russia and China are backing Syria and Iran. Now, Cyprus, default risk remains elevated, says Moody. Now, what boggles my mind, and for those people who are new, Cyprus is still under capital controls. In the beginning, they said Cyprus would be only in capital controls for 2 weeks, and they said one more week. Well, it's been over 100 days. But they're expecting Cyprus to make a huge turnaround and get better. But let's think of this, and let's think about this. If you had a drug addict, and you were continually giving the drug addict the same drugs, and expecting the drug addict to get better, it will never happen. So let's look at Cyprus here for a second. Capital controls are still in effect. People can't take money out. Their money is frozen. They are robbed of their money. Foreign investors don't want to invest into Cyprus. It's very difficult to do business in Cyprus. You can't open a new account and put money into the banks in Cyprus, and they just pile debt upon debt upon debt. So how are they expecting Cyprus to make a recovery? Well, they really aren't. The central bankers don't want them to recover. They don't even want the paper money. They're putting the screws to Cyprus to get a couple of things from them. One, their natural resources. Two, their gold. That's what they want. They want real hard assets, and all of this that they're doing will never, ever help Cyprus, Greece, Portugal, Spain, France. It will never help. The only thing it will do is make the country suffer even more, eventually until they say, we give, here's our gold, thank you. Oh, here, you could take our natural resources, thank you. That is the main prize of these central bankers, to get rid of their crappy printed paper that they create out of thin air and trade it in for something that is real. And by doing this, and what they've been doing, will never work. Okay, let's move on here. 85% of Americans dissatisfied with the government's handling of nation's finances. I don't know, does this really come as a shock to anyone? Well, it doesn't for me. What we have here is the nation's finances, 85% dissatisfied, 14% are satisfied. The poverty, 80% dissatisfied, 19% satisfied. Now, just from this survey, I mean, here's another one. I'm sorry, let me just go on. Labor and unemployment issues, 72% that are dissatisfied. Satisfied, only 26%. Now, with America recovering and everything's getting better, like they continually tell us, the stock market continually rising, why would the people be so unhappy? Because there is a disconnect between those who are underemployed, unemployed, have been looking for work for months and months, those people who had to take 2 part-time jobs to make up enough money just to live. They are unhappy, and this is how it started in the Great Depression. The only difference now is you can't see the bread lines. You can't see, in many times, people on the streets begging for food or shelter, because what has happened here is the government has been subsidizing everyone with unemployment benefits, with food stamps, and many other benefits. So nobody will be able to see this. Yes, you see pockets of this here and there, but not like the Great Depression. So they figured out how to hide all this, so it doesn't call attention to what is really going on. And what they really want you to do is put your eyes back on the stock market. All eyes on the stock market. And they figured out from the Great Depression and all this time how to do this, and it's working perfectly. Now, I know we all forgot about the U.S. debt limit and the national debt, and we're approaching $17 trillion, and the debt limit has been suspended, and they're just spending and spending and spending. And Jack Lew, the Treasury Secretary, says the Obama administration will not negotiate terms for the next debt ceiling increase with congressional Republicans. Well, we know that they are not going to do anything with the debt ceiling. If, for instance, they decide to stop spending, because the only way to stop this is to stop spending, because they don't bring in enough tax revenue to cover the full interest on the debt, and to pay for all these programs, they have to borrow the money, because there's just not enough of it. If they stopped doing all of this, everything would come to a screeching halt. They wouldn't be able to pay the interest on the debt. There would be mass governmental layoffs. Programs would disappear: Social Security, Medicaid, welfare, food stamps, the military. Everything would come to a screeching halt if they really decided to do something, which they're not going to, because history has shown us that they are just going to push this down the road again. Congress has raised the debt ceiling 14 times between 2001 and 2013. Do you think all of a sudden they're just going to say, hey, you know something? Now we're just getting really way too high, so let's cut this off now. No, they're at 17 trillion. They should have done this a long, long time ago. But it's way past that time, and it doesn't matter, because there is no way they are going to shut this whole thing down. They're going to keep going until the bitter end. And there was another article here that says the debt reckoning has arrived. Total debt owed now approaches $60 trillion, while Fed wrestles with interest rates. Confidence game. And we can see that this is completely out of control. They have lost control. The storm is brewing over the government. They know it. They don't know what to do. And their only out is to start World War III. And I know a lot of people like, no, this is not going to happen. But yes, it is. It's going to happen. We see the buildup all around the world, and it will happen. Now, there was an article that says the conditions for a perfect storm are rapidly developing: spiking gas prices, food prices, interest rates, deteriorating housing market, and Deutsche Bank is on the verge of collapse. And we can see that everything has gone up. I know I keep track of a couple of products that are around my area, and if you go to inflation deflation, I have little graphs that show the increase of prices. But overall, from 2002 to 2012, and I can remember back to 1995 when gas was 99 cents, and now it's approaching $4. So I don't know how anyone can say that there is no inflation, but eggs have gone up 73%, coffee 90%, peanut butter 40%, milk 26%, bread 39%, spaghetti macaroni 44%, orange juice 46%, turkey 56%, ground beef 61%, margarine 143%, wine 6%. Now let me just tell you about wine. 2 days ago, and I probably should put this on my inflation deflation page, I went into the store and this bottle of wine was $13.99. Just today, it went up $1 to $14.99. Another bottle that used to be $9.99 has gone up to $11.99. I'm seeing huge increases in wine lately. Okay, let's move on here. Now, there was came out in the news that retail sales slide, the biggest drop and miss in 12 months. They were expecting 0.8%, and the sales growth was 0.4%. Now, I mean, it makes sense. Retail sales are not going to be going off the charts because we have to remember that the disposable income of people is disappearing. It's evaporating. People are out of work. If you use the real calculation of unemployment, it's around 23% or so. People are underemployed. People are taking 1, 2, 3 part-time jobs just to get by. People are making just enough to get by. And retail is the last thing that they want to do and go out buy electronics, games, and whatnot. They're going out and spending it on food. They're spending it on fuel for their car. And as fuel prices continually rise and food prices continually rise, it's eating away at more and more of their money. And also I was thinking, I remember back in February 2013, a lot of, now if retail business is doing so well, then we wouldn't have mass closings of retail stores. And I went back to the article in February of the stores that are closing. Like, for instance, Best Buy. They're going to close 200 to 250 stores. Sears is going to close 100 to 125 stores, and Kmart 175 to 225 stores. JCPenney is going to close 300 to 350 stores. Office Depot is going to close 125 to 150 stores. Barnes & Noble is going to close between 190 to 240 stores. GameStop is going to close 500 to 600 stores, because the last thing you're going to spend your money on when you're spending it on food, clothing for your children, is games. Office Max, 150 to 175 stores. Radio Shack, 450 to 500 stores. So we can see that retail is not doing well. And what keeps the retail market going? The middle class. If the retail is not doing well, that gives us an indication that the middle class is not doing well. Okay, let's move on here. Now, the U.S. military is getting a deeper footprint in the Philippines. The United States is negotiating an agreement to allow it to position military equipment and rotating personnel in the Philippines while avoiding the controversial issue of reestablishing U.S. bases in the country, officials from both countries say. And where is the Philippines close to? China. And we're not establishing a base, but we're rotating military there, and we are positioning all around China, all around the Middle East, to get ready for what eventually will be coming, which is war. Now, a couple episodes back, I talked about, and there was an article about troops leaving Afghanistan, and I wrote in that episode, and I believe it was also the Sentinel alerts, I call BS, bullshit on the president, and now it comes out, U.S. diplomat, troops not leaving Afghanistan anytime soon. And what I said, it must have been maybe a week ago, I think, episode 106, what I said back then is there is no way we are leaving Afghanistan. To understand why we are there, first of all, poppies are grown in Afghanistan, which is used for opium, which is sold by the U.S. government. Plus, U.S. identifies vast mineral riches in Afghanistan: gold, lithium, copper, and there is a huge, huge, huge copper deposit in Afghanistan, and China wants a piece of this. There is no way the central bankers, the U.S. government, is going to leave Afghanistan. This is what I said in episode 106. And guess what? They are not leaving. It has nothing to do with the Afghanistan people. It has nothing to do with freeing them of what's going on there. It has to do with the natural resources of the country, the central bankers getting their hands on it. That's it. The end. It's the same everywhere we look. And what's funny is they go on with all this BS, the longest war in U.S. history, and with Afghanistan, and how Obama plans to move quickly, and it goes on to all this BS and BS instead of really what the main point of why we're there. Now, the Syrian rebels found the chemical cache found by Assad army. So what happened was the Assad army found the chemical weapons that the rebels have been using, and they're bringing this to the UN to show them. And this was found on July 7th. It was 281 barrels filled with dangerous, hazardous chemical materials. Israel has bombed a Syrian arms depot. These were weapons from Russia, and it looks like Israel took off from Turkey, used a submarine from to do the bombing run in Syria, and now Russia is building up and flexing its muscles with military war games, and they have about 160,000 servicemen, 1,000 tanks, 130 planes, 70 ships, and they're just flexing their muscles. They know what's going on. Putin's not stupid. He understands what the central bankers are after in Syria and Iran, and he knows eventually this will turn into an all-out war, because They do not want peace. There are no nuclear weapons. And the reason why I say this is that, Israel comes out and it says attack on Iran is imminent. Iran are weeks away from crossing the red line and creating a nuclear weapon. You know, Netanyahu says we will attack Iran without the U.S. So, let's get this thing going here. I went back, and he's been saying this, not him, but the same story has been told for over 25 years or so. And if we go back, it goes further back than this, but let's just, in 1995, the New York Times conveys the fears of a senior U.S. and Israeli officials that Iran is much closer producing nuclear weapons than previously thought. They're about 5 years away. That was in 1995. In 1998, tests show Iran is bent on acquiring nuclear weapons because no one builds an 800-mile missile to deliver conventional warheads. In the same week that this was said, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld reports to Congress that Iran could build an intercontinental ballistic missile, one that could hit the U.S. within 5 years. Now, 1995, 1998. 2002, CIA warns that the danger from nuclear-tipped missiles, especially from Iran and North Korea, they could have this in 2 to 5 years. I mean, they're that close. 2002, George W. Bush labels Iran part of the axis of evil, along with Iraq and North Korea. Now, back then, why did they say that? That's right, because North Korea, Iraq, Iran, not trading in the reserve currency. No central banks. That's why they're axis of evil. And now, I bet you Iraq is not the axis of evil anymore, but North Korea and Iran still are. Let's speed up ahead here. 2007, President Bush warns that a nuclear-armed Iran could lead to World War III. They are very close at creating a nuclear weapon. So they've been 2 to 5 years out for the last 25 years. I mean, it doesn't stop. 2009, U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee report states there is no sign that Iran leaders have ordered up a bomb. So they're even reporting, after all this propaganda, they're saying that there is no bomb. Even, in 2012, the UN went in there and said Iran doesn't have a bomb. Now, Netanyahu's out there saying they're almost crossing the red line. They're this close. Let me see, what does he say? He's saying that he's telling an American audience that the Islamic Republic was just 60 kilos of 20% enriched uranium short of crossing his red line. They've been crossing the red line for 20-something years. Still, no bomb. When are they going to make the bomb already? There is no bomb. It's only to get to to get the U.S. reserve currency back into the country and to establish a central bank. That is it. The end. There is no other reason. Okay, let's move on here. Now, we know that in Syria, the U.S. government, central bankers, are having a huge problem in getting the war started because, they got to get the reserve currency implemented into Syria so then they can move on to Iran. But the rebels, the paid mercenary army, is fighting amongst each other. So the government, what they're doing is they're calling on the Pakistani Taliban to send hundreds of people to reunite the rebels and to continue their fighting. If this doesn't work, they're trying everything. This seems like a last-ditch effort. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel here to get this war started. And it is not working. Assad is winning, pushing them back. And what I fear is when the U.S. government central bankers are against the wall and they have run out of all options, they will create some type of false flag to get us into war in Syria. And that is the biggest concern, and we will see something like that happening. Okay, let's move on here. Now, in Egypt, because of Morsi the outing of Morsi, the U.S. government central bankers are worried that it could affect the reserve currency and the central bank in this country. That if they get rid of this, the U.S. armed forces will have to invade to protect the oil fields, to protect the reserve currency, and protect the central bank. And this is why U.S. ships approach U.S. Embassy in Egypt, and they are getting into position just in case the Marines have to go in and establish a presence so the reserve currency and the central bank are not removed from the country. That is their only interest there. They don't care about anything, and the oil, of course. I mean, they don't care about the people or anything like that. That has no bearing. Or that the people have spoken and they do not want the United States, Obama, involved in their country. And this is why the U.S. government central bankers are fighting all around the world just to keep the reserve currency in all the countries. But like with any empire, you can just do it for so long, and eventually it just completely falls apart. We're seeing this now with Australia, with China, with Russia, with North Korea, with Iran, with Syria, and we're seeing it in many, Brazil, that all these countries are starting to use other currencies and not use the U.S. dollar. Okay, let's move on here. Now, there was a report that the Canadian companies are open to cyber attacks, says federal agency. Gaps in the cybersecurity efforts of Canadian corporations could be leaving them open to sophisticated attacks by hackers. And most Canadian critical infrastructure assets, including electricity, distribution networks, banking systems, transportation systems, and telecommunication networks, are owned by private sector or by provincial governments. So we're seeing this and warnings coming out in the U.S., the U.K., Europe, Canada, Australia. This main event cyber attack is not going to be just in the U.S. This will be a worldwide cyber attack event to bring all countries into World War III. And this will cover up the economic collapse. And this is what the central bankers are going to use if they can't get the war going, if they can't confiscate the weapons, if they can't declare martial law, as we saw with the Zimmerman trial. They are trying everything they can. Their backs are against the wall. The storm is brewing over the government. They don't know which way to turn. Things are falling apart. Now, Homeland Security reported that a recent cyber attacks hacked into energy networks. A series of recent cyber attacks used basic tools to break into energy company networks and threaten their automated systems, according to a memo from the Department of Homeland Security. In at least one case, the attackers successfully obtained all the information needed to access the industrial control systems environment. And the energy companies are targeted more frequently by hackers than businesses in other industries. And they are very vulnerable to attacks. And the memo, the report goes on to say, the attack indicates a sophisticated knowledge of electricity infrastructure and cascading impacts that require increased vigilance nationwide. And we are seeing this over and over. It's the same thing played out, that they are warning us that a huge cyber attack is coming, Everything is vulnerable, especially the power grid infrastructure. Banks are hugely vulnerable, and we are all under a threat. The government has been reminding us that any attack using a cyber attack is an act of war. Okay. Now, Obama made a statement on the Zimmerman verdict, and I thought it was very interesting that he went on to say, but he also threw in this one line here. We should ask ourselves if we're doing all we can to stem the tide of gun violence that claims too many lives across this country on a daily basis. His agenda is to get every gun out of the hands of Americans. That is what they're trying to do. And they've been trying to do this, but they cannot get any type of traction. They cannot get this off the ground. They even have the new Black Panthers saying that Zimmerman verdict means war, and the Black Panthers are urging followers to take to the streets and stay there. The George Zimmerman verdict is a declaration of war that only the devil can applaud, according to the Twitter feed for the new Black Panther Party. And they've been trying this all day long. The Department of Justice is trying to play the race card, and nothing is really coming about from this. And I believe they were trying to hope that something would turn out, so this way they could declare martial law, do gun confiscation, and enact the executive orders that the president has put forth of taking control of communications, taking control of all the industries, but they cannot get anything out of this. So what does this mean? This means that they are not done. They are going to move to the next level, where we are going to see false flags that need to be horrific, bloody, and they are going to do this pretty quickly here, because you have to remember, they have the gun bill, UN Arms Treaty, and CISPA pending in the Senate. They're not sitting there just to sit there. They're sitting there for a reason. They're sitting there waiting for an event to pull them out and say, let's get this signed. What will that event be? Well, we're going to see something that has to do with gun violence to get the gun bills passed. We're going to see something with a cyber attack to get CISPA passed. We are definitely going to see these type of events. We are also going to see an event to bring us into war with Syria. They're making this last-ditch effort with the Taliban joining the rebels, and they're trying to push this forward, but this again will probably fail. And when this does fail, they're going to be left with no other course of action except for a false flag. And again, most of the American people are sleeping. They are not awake. So what they're going to have to do is make something that is bloody, make people wake up, and beg for war, beg for the gun legislation, beg for CISPA to stop these cyber attacks and the robbing of the money. Now, we do have a couple of false flags between July 15th. We have a couple of drills coming up, potential false flags. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just seems to always correspond to a drill, so we're looking at each one of these so we are all prepared for these type of things. Between the 15th and the 20th, I believe, is the National Scout Jamboree, which is a secret, like FEMA drill, biological drill going on, and they moved the National Scout Jamboree to a different location. And on July 18th, we have the Quantum 2 drill going on, and this is a cyber attack on 50 bank and other type of companies. And we also have the New York City chemical drill from the whole month of July, and it's supposed to be on 3 different days. We have on the 15th and 16th biological drills in Colorado and Wisconsin, and we have other drills which we don't even know about. So there could be a dirty nuclear bomb going off. There could be mass explosions going off. There could be anything and anything going on to have these bills passed. How are they going to do it? We are not sure, but whatever information we have, we are using to let us know what is going on. Now, I just wanted to read something to everyone. This was sent to me by one of our listeners who lives in Australia. I'm not going to use the person's name. And he lives in Australia. And in 2008, he was saying that Australia really didn't see a slowdown during the time period that everywhere here in Europe and the U.S. saw a slowdown. But they're starting to see a slowdown now in Australia. And I know we have a couple of people from Australia listening. And what he goes on to say is that contractors that he works with have told me that their wages have been cut as much as $20 an hour to keep their job. And the area which he lives in has around 20,000 people living there and over 300 houses available for rent. And now, this may seem like nothing to be alarmed at, except only 6 months ago, you literally could not get a house. There were none available. You went on a list. And we can see things are starting to deteriorate in Australia from this. And he goes on to say that one of the tenants I had in one of my houses lost his job, and I had to cut $100 a week off the rent to get a tenant. And we saw this here in the U.S. in the beginning of the housing problem, where there was a time where you couldn't find homes, and then all of a sudden, as time went on throughout 2008, it was getting harder and harder to sell a house. There were not many people coming to homes, looking for homes anymore, and before you knew it, there were many houses for sale. People started losing their jobs, and it looks like Australia is heading down that path. Listen, everyone, I want to thank you very much for listening, and I am trying to line up other interviews for Sunday. Hopefully they pan out, and we will see what happens. And thank you very much for everyone, and especially all the new people and the people who have been sticking with me. Thank you for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.